I'm just not supposed to have been the person that did that. Like I was never the cool kid. I was never the smart kid. Everything was just harder.
And I'm going to read it. It says 3% of VC money goes to women-founded companies.
I did have this feeling of like, if I don't do that, I will regret it on my deathbed. I don't know where that came from, but I wanted to push through that fear and the uncertainty around that. We were two women. Neither one of us was a coder or technical. We were marketing background. We weren't supposed to be that profile. It never stopped us from coming up with the idea and saying that we can be a founder. I often say leaving my very well-paying job at the time to go start this idea and services business was a totally not logical thing to do.
This is Giants. On this show, we sit down with the founders, builders, and visionaries who help shape Vancouver and are building what it will become. The decisions, the disasters, the defining moments. I'm Nejeed Kassam. Let's dig in.
Today's guest is the co-founder and former CEO of Allocadia, the Vancouver-founded company that helped marketers measure and manage their performance. Over 11 years, she helped build one of Canada's most successful female-run tech companies, raised more than $30 million in VC money, we won't hold that against her, and ultimately stewarded the company through a landmark exit. At the time was widely recognized as one of the largest tech exits by a female-only founding team in Canada. After a few years off, she couldn't help herself and is back building again with her new company, Six. An amazing CEO, a mom, a twin, a board member, and an all-around badass, my friend Kristine Steuart. Kristine, welcome to Giants.
Hey, Nejeed.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
We're really grateful to have you.
Thanks for having me.
We like to begin our episodes and kind of intertwine through our episodes a little peek behind the curtain, the human behind all the building. Before you were a transformational leader, a CEO, you were something. Tell me about growing up, values, the experiences that shaped you before you were building.
My parents are French-Canadian. My mom didn't speak a word of English, and my dad spoke a little bit of English, and she said it was her ticket out of town. And so I was born in Quebec, and they moved here when I was 3. Just grew up in a very middle-class type of family, lots of good support, lots of good energy, but was also really just left to my own devices. Go figure out your stuff. My dad worked for the government. My mom worked for Canadian Airlines. And so we actually had 0 conversations at the dinner table about business. But actually what I learned from my parents was more of what they did outside of work. She was very much about the mindset of game and winning and training, practicing. She would run up and down the stairs with a pack of bricks on her back. And so I did grow up with that, just analyzing and thinking about, okay, what's your mindset? How are you approaching things? How are you problem solving, et cetera? And then also with my dad, just constant projects outside of work, right?
Building stuff,
building
doing stuff,
creating stuff, built half the house before AI and web. And I remember asking him, how'd you do that? He's like, I just figured it out. So I do feel like that type of just working hard and sort of work ethic influenced me. Not an especially great student. Just always
Don't tell your kids that.
Yeah, exactly. Always worked really hard for my grades. And went to SFU, couldn't get into UBC, and studied communication. And that was sort of early days and being brought up.
Startups, we often talk a lot about grit.
Yeah.
I think the fact that you didn't get into UBC, the fact that you didn't get your first choice, the fact that things didn't come easy to you as a kid, I believe probably helped you in the long run.
I think about myself this way, just that underdog. I'm not...
The chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, I'm just not supposed to have been the person that did that. I was never the cool kid. I was never the smart kid. Everything was just harder. And I feel like I had this stuff in my head, good ideas. I'm definitely a daydreamer. So I had a point of view, but I had a really hard time sort of expressing that or having the confidence to actually bring that out, go act on those things. But that is how I did that. I just started doing.
So I want to dig into that a little bit because, I want to talk about that moment that you became an entrepreneur.
Right.
And confidence is a illogically large part of entrepreneurship.
Totally.
Something that I struggled with as an entrepreneur. I know that many folks do. Did you always want to become an entrepreneur? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I did always have this idea in my head that I wanted to go start a business. And so when I started my career in technology, I remember I was hiring sort of freelancers and contract workers. And I thought, oh, that sounds that, maybe I could do something like that. And I did have this feeling of like, if I don't do that, I will regret it on my deathbed. I don't know where that came from, but I wanted to push through that fear and the uncertainty around that and just go try something. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, I started off as a services business. And I think once you learn that you can actually sell your time, your expertise, you set up a company, you start to build, but then you hit a ceiling pretty quickly. And so this is where a bit of the creative process came around too, in terms of thinking of a product that I could sell, what that might look like, how you could scale that. I often say leaving my very well-paying job at the time to go start this idea and services business was a totally not logical thing to do. I had just gotten married at the time. I had great support from my husband in terms of just going and trying this. I had just had my daughter. So also some flexibility and room at that time in my life to go try this and start that a day a week, etc. So
it just happened.
Yeah. Thank you.
You do have an identical twin sister. You founded Allocadia with Katherine.
Yeah.
You built with her. What was your relationship like growing up?
That's a good question. I have a younger sister. She's been always, the younger one has been always so amazing about kind of that connection that you have with your twin sister. I've always admired that about her. But yeah, there's just an innate sort of connection there. And growing up, I think, especially as you go through teenage years, you're trying to assert in general, even if you're not a twin, your independence and who you are, and what you want to do in the world. I think it's harder when you're an identical twin because you're also trying to say how you're different or than that person next to you. You've had the same friends. We even started the same job as lifeguards together. But yeah, we built the business. It's actually because we had complementary skill sets. She would do product development and more technical. I would do the more sales and marketing. And over the years, as we built Allocadia, as you would with founders, your roles kind of shift over time. She ended when we were just, before our exit, doing some of our biggest deals with our biggest customers in theater style buying. She was really great in front of the customers, really great with team. And I think of her at our annual Christmas parties, and she would tell stories about team members, and they always loved that. And these were probably times where I was just drained or, doing whatever. So we played off each other. And just a really great support system. But we had our moments, for sure.
All siblings do, as all founders do, and as all twins do.
Exactly.
And I have twins in my family, so I've watched this sort of play out.
Yeah.
Did you ever think when you were 11 years old that you guys might build something transformational together? Was that even on the tape? Never.
That's why I think of this kind of underdog, more for myself. I would just see all these great things and I feel like I could contribute. I feel like I could be a part of that. More in my head was oh no, this is not something that I would be able to do. And how do all these people do these amazing things? Never in a million years would I have imagined that we'd go and build a big business and raise VC money and have a big team of wonderful people and then get the outcome in the end. I mean, this was, let's be real, in tech. And when you
small chances,
and it's the dream too, right? This is part of what you're aiming for. So I would never have imagined that.
I've had the privilege of building with the same people a couple of times. The trust is there, which is the biggest thing for me. But never did they have the same DNA as I did.
Yeah.
How did that dynamic work day to day? I think there's just a genuine curiosity about what it's like to build with somebody you've lived with your whole life.
Yeah. What comes to mind when I worked with Katherine is we really tried to it's like you're not telling each other all the details, all the little things, because it's like you're trying to manage through the ups and downs.
Mhm.
I would just take some stuff and not engage and share everything, and like vice versa. I think about board meetings, and I think about where Katherine would share sort of some frank feedback with me after. She'd say, good job, and that was good, but when they do this, don't do that. And I don't.
It must be hard getting feedback from your twin sister.
Yeah. But I appreciated that. Only person I think that to me, it does feel good. It wasn't hard to receive feedback. So I think that Kath respected and acknowledged and celebrated my role as CEO. I think there's a transition from going from founder mode, and that means a certain thing, from a leadership, from a day-to-day. And then as your company gets bigger, you're working more and more into becoming the CEO role. And I think Kath sort of, just embrace that, right? You might see some founders that's a challenge or that's a struggle. It was none of that. Just each played a role as we built the company.
I want to talk about your mom a little.
Yeah.
Because, mostly because I love tennis so much. What was it like growing up with someone who is like obsessed with something like tennis, a champion, and also your mom?
So she's a force and she's a character. I just admire how she thinks about life and, her place in it, and her energy and enthusiasm just towards life, towards her family, and to her sport. And she really taught me just, have your passion, have your thing that you're just driving towards, that you love, and that you're building towards. Even now, we have the dinner table conversations with all the sisters and the extended family. And about 50% of the time, she's telling a story and you're like, there's a nugget here. Maybe there's something good. And at the end, it's like, okay. And she has to explain it more. And you're like, okay, I get it. And then the other 50% of the time, it's like, this just makes no sense. Like, I just do not know where you were going.
I think that might be all moms, though.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're okay on that.
There you go. I mean, she takes it to a whole other level, but she's a full package deal. It's a bit about, she used to bring out old tennis books, old falling apart books of like all the old tennis players, and then sharing some stories about, well, they use this tactic, and she studied like the sport. But yeah, for her big approach was both kind of strategy, the strategy game, and then also the physical, right? Like actually having your skill sets, being ready to compete, but having the right mindset. And you use that in business all the time. And she's a winner. And it's a game in tech and entrepreneurship. I do look at that. It's in the end, it is a win or lose type of game.
I would argue, apart from being a parent, which I think is the hardest job in the world, entrepreneurship is a pretty tough gig. And regardless of how experienced or not you are, while this is uncomfortable for me to say, it's all made even harder when you're a woman.
Yeah.
You alluded to this 2 to 3%
yes.
horribly heartbreaking data point.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read it. It says 3% of VC money goes to women-founded companies.
Yeah.
Kristine, you're a badass. I said at the top of the show, you ran out of Allocadia. You did what so many of us dreamed about, and you did it as a woman. What structural or emotional challenges did you face that talk to the other young women out there building stuff right now?
That was a very obvious thing as I was building. And it was probably most prominent when I would go out at a couple of big investors. I would go to their CEO summit. It was literally a room full of men and myself. So this was always something that I sort of felt and saw. And there's some very real implications, I think, as a woman. But there's lots of research around how even in investor pitches, you're asked kind of not the promotion questions, but the negative questions, like what are the risks, or, your market isn't large, et cetera. So I think it's important to just acknowledge those types of things and bias that's out there, and just be prepared for those types of things and answer questions differently, for example, or whatever. I also felt like I had every place to be there. When I talked to CEOs and founders, and it's all the same struggles. It's all the same opportunities. It's all the same challenges. Like you said, people, market, customers, product innovation, et cetera. So there's absolutely a place, like women have every ability and opportunity to be at that table, but yet they don't. There's so little. And I've done some thinking around this. There's different stages. Why don't they start some? Why don't they go raise money? Why don't they come in as professional CEOs? Like there's a whole bunch of layers as to why, we're not seeing as many women. And there was a woman who came through, and I sort of feel like it's my job to highlight to the team the questions they got, or it was a perfect presentation. And like, did everyone notice that? And I have all the women VCs writing me, thank you for saying that. And thank you for mentioning that. So I also feel like it's my job to advocate and say it's possible. It's why I do things like this. They should be starting businesses. And even in enterprise software, which is even less VC funding and getting into Series A and B, et cetera, and just go for it.
I want to talk a little bit more about Allocadia. When did you decide I'm going to go all in? The founding and the services transition, but when were you like 2 feet jumping off the cliff? And how was, tell me about that decision, that process, those feelings.
So yeah, it was part-time to start. Like it was sort of on the side of the desk. I said, doing a day a week. And so, okay, there's an idea here. So we hired an engineer. Back then you couldn't prototype, couldn't even, do code. So if you weren't a coder, I wasn't a coder. Katherine did do front-end design, front-end coding and design. So she was mocking things up and we hired someone to build it. You put in your after-tax dollars. Like this is very stressful at the time. We didn't have a home. Vancouver's expensive. And so you make these sort of hard choices. And there's so much uncertainty in the beginning years. And I'm kind of reminded about that as I start a new company. You've got these big visions. You've started to get some customers, but there's doubt. You have no idea. It's all easy in hindsight. But I think the moment it really shifted is, we signed some amazing clients in the early days. We bootstrapped to $1 million in sales before we did, any VC financing. And this is someone that had no experience selling. So I had an old colleague of mine come in once a week to do some selling, kind of coaching with me. But it was like when we had like the 3, 4, 5 first enterprise customers, and those customers stayed with us through the whole lifespan of Allocadia. They were amazing people. They turned out to be, I would even call them friends. And they believed in Katherine and I. They knew we were selling on mockups. They knew we were the founders. But that's when I think, okay, there
was that belief.
It was that belief, and it was a bit of the customer proof, but you grind that out. You grind out getting customer proof, and it's a lot of what we talk about in the new company. Then you know, okay, this is a thing, and we're going to go 2 feet in. I think that's when Katherine left her job. I went sort of full-time, then had my second, all that kind of stuff. But it's the customers. Talk
about being a non-technical founder.
Yeah.
Because it's different. Did you think of that as a superpower or a bit of a kryptonite?
Neither one of us was a coder or technical. We were marketing background. Katherine had worked in design at Yahoo in Norway, came back here, was sort of teaching web design, and then started doing websites. And like we weren't supposed to be that profile. It never stopped us from coming up with the idea and saying that we can be a founder. Throughout the years, I've said that. I think when I met some VCs and raising money, I think some of them didn't like that. There's often this notion of you've got to have the big, deep technical co-founder and, the more business one and storytelling and raising money. And I think we sort of had that in a way. Kath was the more product, I'll call it product versus, technical per se. And even now in this new company, it's more business and customer leaders that we're starting it. And I think that's totally doable. I think it's totally doable. You build a good team though, you build a good product. You still want to build that good product. If it's not the founder, I think that's fine. It's doable.
So many of us building stuff, one of our big challenges is getting those first customers to care.
Yeah.
The first 1, 2, to get that validation, the partnership, the influence they have on us as builders is massive, especially in the early days. Who was your first real customer, if you're allowed to share it? Yeah. And how did you earn their trust?
I'm seeing their faces right now, and I'll send this to them when we have the recording. So our first bigger enterprise client was Juniper Networks, and it was 2 women there. They were so amazing. And then Citrix, and then VMware. And you're exactly right. When you're an entrepreneur, you need customer to believe in you. There is no hiding that you're a small company, that you're starting out. I think you have to embrace that. You have to. We're doing that here. It's easier now because we say we're a very experienced team. Back then, I was not an experienced, And like I said, one of the first, Juniper found us through Katherine had done some Google AdWords. And then we talked about this later. So we were all laughing with our customers because they said, I think these are the founders that are, when we submitted the form and they're presenting. And I remember we got to procurement with them and they wanted financials and blah, blah. And I'm like, what? The deal is dead. It's over. And I wrote this really nice letter. I remember I was so proud of this letter because I came from marketing communications, good writer. And I was like, about our runway and our customer, but like we had runway because
you kept funding it yourself.
And I remember it got through finance. And I was like, oh my God, it's like totally a letter. But later I'm talking, Susan was our customer. And she says, yeah, and I remember running over to the finance team and I get it. We believe this will be good and we've got it. And so she
advocated for you.
She advocated for us and you needed that. And it's about them believing in you. And I think as we think about
you as a person and a leader and your vision for the company.
Yes.
So you're as much selling the dream as you are the actual thing.
Totally. And they couldn't find anything else. It was a very white space, right? There was no one else doing what we were doing. And so they really had a business pain point that they needed to solve. And they felt that we could help them at the age-old equation of value and customer value and at its core. But yeah, and then it's a small kind of community too in B2B enterprise software buying and through referrals. And then we would talk to analysts. But I still think about those early customers as I owe them so much. And we still talk. We still catch up. Actually, I'm due for a catch up with them.
I think one of the things that's often kind of undersold in this early customer acquisition process is simply that they need to believe you.
Yeah.
You, not the company, not what they need to believe in. They need to buy into kind of your emotional thing.
Yeah.
These early customers. And it seems like you had that with some of these and you're really lucky and it's amazing you did.
I did, but I'm not very good at that, to be honest.
I think our listeners might disagree.
Well, okay. So yes, I can connect with people and, we can have some good discussions, but I think maybe as it relates to pitches, and I think you think of entrepreneurs, they gotta be the big vision. I've always battled that a little bit because I think by nature I'm a realist and I'm not the big,
But there are different kinds of CEOs. There's the visionaries, there's the operators. And of course, these things don't live in silos. But, how would you describe yourself in this?
Okay, so this is one of the things that sort of anchors on my leadership philosophy. And it's that yin and yang I was talking about with my sister too. And there's this great article, HBR article about the 5 traits of good leaders. And I love it so much because it was the duality of 2 things you need to be at once, like the strategic executor. I think I'm saying that, pronouncing that right. But you have to be both the person that has the big vision and also the person that can execute. A lot of people think you have to be those are 2 separate people. I actually think you've got to be the balance of both of those things. And that's what makes leadership hard. And you need to know when you're going on to vision and strategy. And you also need to know when you get into the details and execution and get stuff done. There's some other sort of principles in there, like you've got to be thinking about your past and your history, but you've got to be thinking about innovation in the future. Leadership is sort of all about that. So anyways, having said that, that's where I needed to train myself more is on that vision and storytelling. And if I was telling that with the team, for example, that's where I'd spend some time and effort because it didn't totally come naturally.
I'm biased because I enjoy that part too, but it's certainly a necessary part of the job.
Yeah, totally.
I want to talk about your decision at Allocadia to build into other software.
Yeah.
There's this constant push and pull. What do we build? What do we integrate with? And, I think one of the brilliant parts was that the software didn't live on an island. It was, I'm a bit of a silo hater, as they like to call me. I think that technologists need to be thinking about where they fit into the ecosystem, even as the VCs tell us to own the ecosystem.
Yeah, totally. Be the platform.
Exactly. How many times have we all heard the be the platform?
Exactly. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean?
Be the CRM. I don't know. Yeah.
So when you made this decision to build into stuff, and I know there was, it was a kind of a bit of a moment for Allocadia. Yeah. Was it driven by the customers? Tell me about when that happened, how it happened, and how it fit into that vision.
Yeah. where I go with that is setting your company strategy is obviously just so important. And I went through, what does that mean exactly? And I had great mentors and CEOs. I anchored around this concept of a one-pager company strategy and where you play and how you win and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, ecosystem was a large part of that. It's also a large part of that in the new company. I just love to partner with different companies. So very early on, some of our early success and momentum was because I went straight to the bosses of some big companies in our space and said, even just those few early customers, we have some joint customers. So I focused, can I share what I'm learning from them? And you share what you're learning from customers. And these partners at these big companies were amazing. But go to market with partners, helping each other, sharing in best practices, delivering value together with customers. And then just from a tech ecosystem perspective, especially right now with all the new, everyone's changing their business process, the technologies they use, how they buy it, how they consume it. I think you just have to have this huge awareness of, especially if you're selling to business, what is the exact ecosystem that you're living in? Where do you fit? Where's deep white space? Where do you connect in? And just have a really open platform. And I think that's where you can go deep into something and not have to be the big platform.
Do you think that was central to your success? Do you think ultimately this decision was one of the decisions?
Yes, I do. And I spent a lot of, I would say 5 to 10% of my time aligning with the heads of the big marketing clouds too. And so the only way to do that is because you're delivering joint value together through your customers.
Of course.
And when you raise VC money, again, like the name of the game is to eventually have some sort of outcome or some sort of transaction. And so I made that. I'm still surprised at sometimes how little I think some CEOs and founders engage in their ecosystem and make themselves known to others and big players and, sharing how they can help each other out, basically. I just think it's a good strategic move. And yes, it's absolutely, it's why we had some acquisition offers along the way, really hard to debate those and say yes or no to those. But yeah, I'm doing it again in this new company.
So you've often written, talked, engaged in the conversation around culture in business. Yeah. Tell us about that. How important was it to Allocadia? What are your special, unique thoughts about it?
Everyone loves to talk about you have to create a good company culture. This is like a given. The hard part is understanding exactly how you do that and what that means. And I do think that there's something you can define as a CEO for your own culture, like anchoring on some core concepts or principles that create a culture that's uniquely yours, that allows people to be creative and feel great about what they're doing, have great career paths, etc. I am not liking just this concept of always having to create these value statements and these 5 things that sound all the same across the board. Integrity, hard work, it's just so annoying. And and that's not me saying that culture isn't important. But I've seen some companies sort of anchor around this, one overall theme in your company. And we're not at a stage right now. It's the age that your culture is part of what the team it's who it's made up of at this stage. But as you get bigger, you start to really feel that it breaks at a certain point. You're like, oh, this is what people mean. I actually have to invest in the culture and what it means here. And some of the best advice I ever received on culture was my board member, Nano. And she said to me, Kristine, your job as CEO is to create a company that people want to belong to. And when she said belong, she meant team members, customers, partners, investors, everyone. So that was a real anchor for me and guiding light. And so, for example, in how this looks in practical terms, I would change our company meetings to be less about just sharing information and more about what's the experience for the team. How are they going to feel? And we would rent out theaters and have team members come up, and one wanted to be a stand-up comedian was sort of doing this. So came up and did that. And and he shared some stuff about our product roadmap. And the team loved that. So those are the types of things about how you create a culture or a company that people want to belong to. Much easier said than done. And it's just actions over and over and over that sort of build a culture.
It's also not one culture, because as companies change and grow, as they expand, as they scale, as the leadership changes, as these are cultures. And I think that's sometimes missed in this conversation.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your exit.
Okay.
Because firstly, it was big and it was sexy and it was didn't feel like that at the time.
But, it was messy and very emotional and super hard. But yes, I mean, so the end result,
The headline in the newspaper was sexy.
There you go.
Let's set the stage. It's 2021.
Yeah.
The world is still hungover, stuck in COVID. I don't know. You have a couple hundred people, 150, something like that.
Around there.
And God knows how many clients. You've spent 11 years building what I will call your third child.
Yeah.
Blood, sweat, tears, the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
Tell me about the process. And I care about the mechanics, but I more care about the emotional experience behind it.
It's the emotional experience, I think, that was sort of a driving force in sort of wanting to go to that next step and that next level with the company. So, I think I'll start first with there's this notion out there of great companies are, bought, not sold. And first of all, I don't believe that. I think that as CEO, you can orchestrate and you should be thinking about orchestrating your next phases, your next steps. And that can be, of course, driven through transactions with, different buyers, different investors at the table. Partners, exactly. So I went through a process where it was kind of status quo. And we were actually growing well. We had great customer retention. We had money in the bank. But I was like, what's the next? I got to push
inflection
to the next level.
Absolutely.
It's my job to create that. And what does that look like? So it was also what I did know is just didn't want to do status quo anymore, like quarter after quarter. I mean, how many quarters is that?
You or is that the company?
I was not feeling pressure, from the board or anything like that. I mean, I was also growing Allocadia at a growth at all costs. And we were growing at 30% at that time and great customer retention stats. So it wasn't like the crazy growth, but that's why we were in a place where I was like, let's push it. Let's try to get there. And so I did. And it was an acknowledgement of the external environment. There was lots of activity still then. Private equity were coming in. They were doing majority buyouts. They were doing, buying companies, bringing them together. There was so much activity. And, my husband works in the markets. And I remember we'd have these conversations where he's like, these frothy times won't last. Little did we know just how deeply that would change, fairly soon after going through the Allocadia exit. We sold mid 2021, right at the height of all that type of transaction. And so it was sort of a combination of those things. I proactively went to my board. And the premise there was I want to take the company to the next level and bring in a majority investor. I wasn't having pressure from investors, but it had been 10, 11, 12. Give some liquidity to early investors, bring in a new partner for the future. The quiet part was that I was tired. And it was time, that maybe through that, there was an inkling of, could we have an exit through that process, right? Because I had been building some, relationships with strategics, but it's a tricky situation. Coming and telling your board, saying that you want that exit gives people they get all freaked out. Of course, everyone knows that's part of the equation. So it's like this funny dance and this funny game. But because we had the good numbers, we had the good, it's all about what you present to the world of private equity and strategic buyers. So we had very good numbers to share on paper, a very good story about growing. And so that's what we did. We hired a banker, which is also a good debate. There's lots of debates around that. He was a great banker. And we were going out there to do the next phase and bring in a majority PE buyer. They would buy 60, 70% of the company, but I would still be CEO. I would keep growing it, but I would have people at the table that had, some experience at that time, go get more customers, et cetera, and take it to the next level. but it ended up in an exit. So it did end up with a private equity buyer kind of merging us with a company they just bought. It was like a great multiple, a great transaction. Everyone was happy around the table. And, frankly, for me, I think from an energy perspective, I raised kids. This was like all my 30s and into my mid 30s or 40s in the end. And I think it was the right time in the market. It was the right time to go and do that. And that is your job as CEO. And it's kind of how I looked at it. It was drama. I always say at least one cry per financing. I had 2 cries at the exit. It's just like melt. It was just the pressure. I didn't want to talk with anyone about it because it was like a 6-month process from going to the board, getting all the materials ready, right? Hiring the banker, getting all the materials, proactively going. And we pitched. I mean, we had 3-4 offers at the table, all around the same numbers. My board was saying it was just a process that was just run like to a T. But like, sure, easy from the outside, but like when it's your whole life, I'm like, what would I go do if Allocadia doesn't work out?
So how did you feel when it closed? Relieved, heartbroken, both?
Mostly relief, because you have chosen to go down this path. And it's like, if you go down a path and you go out there and you're talking to bank and you don't do a transaction, so the pressure on that is tremendous. We weren't going to be in major trouble because we had money in the bank and we had all the good numbers, but you lose this momentum. You lose because you didn't do the next event. You didn't do the next step that you set out to do as CEO. And it was relief. It was crazy, just busy and you so much to do, as you know, through, and I call it the deal moments of truth. And you've got like that moment, and then we hit our number through it. These are people I've now started a new company with. I remember calling up, hit our number. Okay, good, great. Move on to the next. Like there's just so many of these little things that have to come together. And mostly relief. In hindsight now, great timing. Right thing to do at that time. I'm surprised how I thought, it's so your life for so long. Again, this feeling. I'm surprised in a way how quickly I moved from it, to be honest. And like, it's still very weird for me to see posts and I see these busy booths and because Allocadia still goes. There's a CEO there and the, private equity backed and signing amazing big customers. There's still team members that work there. So I love that. I think that's really fun. But I was okay to also let it go. And I'm surprised about that because you do put so much identity and into these businesses that you create. And in a way, that's why I've started a new company. And you realize you're not so attached to the thing, but you're kind of attached to the process a bit and the creativity and the execution and doing it with great people. It's not necessarily, and look, I was passionate about what we were solving. We were bringing confidence to every market in the world. I started as a marketer. I still love that. And this new company, ironically, extends that. We're now working with brands to help them do more marketing and engage in a world where email's hard, digital paid ads are going away, website visits are down. How do you engage with customers? So in a way, I've kind of come back to my roots of helping brands with marketing. It's still my passion. So it's like, you don't have to lose the passion around what you're trying to do either, but it just doesn't have to be so overt that it's like, it's this specific idea and this way that you solve it.
Do you categorize it as success?
Yes.
It's a funny thing though, it leaves a fleeting taste, right?
I do look at building in tech, at least, and especially when you take on VC money, it's pretty binary in the end.
Did you know that when you took the money?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a big choice to take money, but I did it because we realized there was a big enough market opportunity. It was very much about the world and the context. If we were going to go sign these big customers and someone else would go do that and do it faster. We had some offers on the business and I still can't believe I said no to those things as we went.
Well, let's dig in there now.
But yeah, just to close up on that, I think, outcomes, it's a funny thing because I don't think of that as a success criteria. It's a bit cheesy, but I think about the careers we help do. I think about the people and families here. I think about the customers we help. Like I really did believe in helping marketers build confidence. I think about those early customers who believe, like, it's more about that.
That's what you remember.
Yeah. And the outcome is like the bow on top. It's like, okay, yes.
So let's talk about some of those through the ups and the downs about that process and how you had these opportunities throughout the process. Tell me a little bit about, because I don't think a lot of people know that.
No, so we talked about partners, and those exit opportunities throughout the life cycle of Allocadia came from those partner relationships and great joint customers, great value. So at the heart of that, those opportunities came because we had those great customers. And there was, two different ones. One was quite early. We just put in our $1 million seeds. That was right when we were bootstrapped at $1 million. And I think it was like something around 16 million equity, which and that equity would have turned out to be something. But at the time, we were trading our own equity and we just put in sort of the seed round for someone else's. And then you were going to go work there and we were just getting traction. But I remember Katherine and I going for a little walk on the beach here in Vancouver. And I was like, do we want to take this? Do we not? That was a whole other interesting thing because the investors who had just put money in, some of them wanted us to take it. And they actually pressured us to do that. So I gave the money back. I gave the $1 million back and started a partnership. And I'll never forget that feeling of the next day opening up my email, going back into, I guess I'd put it in a folder, the people who were interested but didn't participate and do it all over again. And then I raised the $1 million again.
With different investors.
With different investors. I was very frank about what had happened. I was super transparent about that. We'd had an offer. They wanted us to sell. We didn't want to sell. I gave them money back. I'm coming back. And again, people that believe in you, we know these people who we're talking about. It's the same people that I think are investors in your business and how we met, and people that just believed in what Katherine and I were doing. So that was good because those investors I think were way better than my first ones. And and then as we grew, we had another offer. I think it was that one was probably around 50 million. And I remember when eventually sort of said, we're going to keep going. I laid down at night and I thought, really? Like, really? Did I just say no? Like, why am I doing that? And until the day that we sold Allocadia, I didn't know if that was a bad decision. So talking about the mental game and playing on your, was that it? Was that going to be the path? Because it would have been somewhat life-changing. I don't think I probably would have retired forever on that one, but this last one was total life-changing too. In those moments, you're really still betting on yourself and you still have the self-doubt. And I look back now, I'm like, I don't know how I did that. And then for some weird reason, and you have these moments where now, of course, you look back. But again, this is 12 years or whatever time frame that was when we had that offer of uncertainty from that point. But you just have to keep believing and pushing.
Well, so we're all lucky you did.
Yeah, well.
And now, like a crazy person, you're doing it all over again. As we come to the end of the conversation today, I want to talk a little bit about Vancouver.
Yeah.
This podcast is about Vancouver and amazing builders like yourself. We've both built companies here in Vancouver, which makes this specifically interesting to me. Do you think Vancouver's a good place to be building great companies? What are the limitations? What are the advantages? Tell me about that.
Yeah. 100%. We can build great companies from here. We've got great people. I think in general, I actually think about this as it relates more to Canada in general, but just having that sort of ambition and bravado that we can do it. We can be the best in the world at something. We can invent it here. We can launch it, run it, and do everything we want to do from Canada. I just feel like we need a bit more of that ambition and that mindset and mentality. Because of course we can. And it's a little bit, even as we talked about sort of women and men and sort of having that confidence, I guess, to just push through and go and start it and go and create it. We do need that culture in general as a country, I think. And I think some of those things are starting to change a little bit. And I think that's starting to be celebrated a bit more and encouraged a bit more. And we do want to be competitive on a global scale, and we want to leverage what we do uniquely here. And we have some great, huge anchor companies in Canada, like the Shopify. So like doing more of that is totally possible. We just get in our own way. Like we don't think it's possible from here, but there's nothing stopping us from doing that at all. And it's just a matter of I guess, pushing through that and starting and having the big vision.
I was reading something you've written, and I really like the turn of phrase, Vancouver has a scale-up gap.
Yeah.
What exactly do you mean by that? And how do we fix the problem?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stats on this, but we have a lot of smaller companies in BC. So there is a concept that innovation is alive and well in BC. But if you count the number of companies that have over 100 or so employees, there's very few. And so I think this is related to ensuring we've got the right kind of mindset and vision to actually build companies that are leaders in their categories, leaders in their markets, the best at what they do in the world, and then go and actually make that a reality. I think there's some restrictions today in terms of how you go do that. There's not a ton of options from a VC or private equity in Canada, but there was a lot of options to go do that and get those partners from the States. But that whole ecosystem is changing today. In the world of SaaS in the last, whatever it is, 15 years, tons of money to go into those companies. I think now it's going really heavy, big money into sort of fewer companies in AI. So, right, how do you get that infrastructure or those partners to help you go from innovation and startup? Is where all big companies start, of course. So so it's good to have that, but having the right ambitions, having the right partners, and no one really knows what that future looks like. Where
do you
are
think
the scale-up?
Vancouver is poorly situated, opportunistically situated in that?
I think we're mostly limited in a way by our ambitions often. So, but I think you just got to go have that and that mindset and start the company with that vision and that ambition in mind. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I feel like we should have much larger anchors in here. We totally could. It's a matter of just executing on it.
Kristine, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
We've enjoyed your candor, your honesty, your wisdom. A big reason why I started the pod and is to meet and hang out with awesome people like you. So thank you. However, you're not quite off the hook.
Okay.
We do this thing called rapid fire before we finish for all of our guests. And I'm going to ask you a number of questions. Please don't overthink them.
Okay.
And just come share the first answer that comes to mind.
Okay.
Most used business app on your phone?
Claude and Slack.
What is a company today that you admire?
Ooh, the one that comes to mind, I've been following what Airbnb is doing. I just like how they've transformed. Through COVID, they had huge issues. They're adding all sorts of new products, et cetera. I just admire that in today's world because everything's changing in tech. So how do you keep pushing through and being relevant?
A book every builder should read.
That's an easy one. The Confidence Code. I think every CEO should read that.
Favorite podcast? And you're not allowed to say this one.
I wouldn't say I have a favorite podcast per se, but I do listen to a lot of women leader podcasts, hearing their stories, especially ones like in media and tech that are in male-dominated worlds. But yeah, that's why I listen.
Early bird, night owl?
Oh, early bird all the way. Coffee.
What's a luxury you refuse to give up?
Oh, my house in Half Moon Bay on the ocean. That was my treat when we sold Allocadia. My happy place. One
trait in an investor that makes you trust them instantly?
No ego.
Favorite place to think in Vancouver?
What comes to mind is coffee shop. It's like I'm the morning. I used to go if I had a quiet little morning, which was rare, but like 49th parallel, just have my coffee and all the thoughts start going.
One word your 6 team would use to describe you?
I'd hope they use like creative and ideas. Probably like go.
One word your Allocadia team would have used to describe you?
Persistent. Kept going.
How about your kids?
I think just like busy, just always a project like I was talking about with my dad.
Most overrated KPI?
Well, I go back, probably not now because everyone's trying to define KPIs, but back when I was building, just was all about growth rate. Yes, you have to be growing. It's very important, but sort of at the expense of everything else.
most underrated KPI?
Anything that has to do with customer value and maybe even predicting that or seeing where it's going. And that's different for every business and not sometimes well-defined.
Best advice you've ever received?
Build a company that people want to belong to. And that's just been a bit of a North Star for how I think about a bunch of things.
Worst advice you've ever received?
I think when I knew it was people decisions where I really wanted to keep, and they'd been part of it for a long time and execs, but we were still trying to find things. And it's like to make those changes, because that's a thing people say, make changes quickly. Sometimes it's not the right thing to do. And you end up sticking with that decision for a while and it hurts.
Last but not least, what is something you believe your 20-year-old self would completely disagree with that was fundamental to your success?
Being myself. That I have something to offer and my style is okay and it matters and it's good and it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kristine Steuart. Kristine, thank you for being honest, thoughtful, and being in the room today. Thanks you.
Thanks for having me.
That was awesome. Thanks for being here and making us a part of your day. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with a fellow builder. Please keep the conversation going, whether it's at your dinner table or on the SkyTrain. Continue to create, transform, and build a better Vancouver. Ciao.